All right, guys, welcome to Second Look. This is East North Church second podcast. Podcast number one would be the full-blown, complete experience of Sunday morning's teaching, whereas what we do in this podcast is try to make it short and sweet and kind of a refresher and looking back. And today I have on the phone with us Pastor Zach, who I don't know how you pulled off getting to Florida so fast, but that's where you are. What's up in Florida?
Yeah. This is where my babysitters live, also known as my in-laws.
Okay.
So I come down and I work for a few days while we have some babysitters before Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
Do it about every year.
Yep, good stuff. You heard about the turkey recall and the salmonella, right? You got to watch out for that.
Nope, I have no idea, but if I know my mother-in-law, she bought that turkey last year.
Wow.
So we're probably good.
That is a long time frozen turkey.
Yes, absolutely. But
all right, well,
that's how they do it. She prepares.
That's impressive. Probably got a good deal on it. Something to think about. I didn't think about the fact that you could probably do that and make a turkey last a whole year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, get them on the sales.
Things that you can learn on the East North Church Second Look podcast. All right, you helped to kick off you're right, in your introduction you said this is the shortest possible series we can pull off because it's only 2 weeks, and you can't go any shorter than that and properly call it a series. And you're going to take us through the book of Ruth, and I thought you did a really good job Sunday. One of the things that you did well was to sort of like walk us through the first two chapters and give good commentary in the process of that. Could you try to give like a summed up version of the story from chapter 1 and 2? You think you can get us there real quick?
Let's try that. So in the shortest possible sense, the book of Ruth is written by an unknown author, and he introduces us immediately in the time of Judges, which is right in the middle of the book of Judges, which is the book in the canon that precedes Ruth. There is a man named Elimelech, and he has a wife named Naomi and two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and they experience a famine and have to go to a country. They sojourn there. They are foreigners among a people known as the Moabites, which are descendants of Lot and one of his daughters. And so they live there for 10 years, and very quickly into the story, Elimelech dies, and the two sons who take wives of Moabite women, they both die, and Naomi is left with two daughters-in-law in a foreign country, at which time he hears that the famine in Israel, actually a place called Bethlehem, the city of bread, is gone. It's no longer a famine. So she goes home, or she is on her way home, rather, and Orpah, one of the daughters-in-law, decides to stay, and Ruth makes a daring, decisive declaration that she will stay with Ruth. She will die with Ruth, and she will end up in whatever eternal destination Ruth has in store for her. Naomi's destination. Yeah. Ruth will be buried with her, and they go back to Bethlehem, at which time they find themselves without food or family in the middle of the hustle and bustle of the city of Bethlehem, and they find themselves alone. Ruth then goes out to glean, which is to come behind during the barley harvest, the reapers, and pick up whatever she can off the ground to eat. And she meets a man named Boaz. And Boaz is in the same clan, distant family relative of Elimelech. And we find out that he is possibly a kinsman redeemer. But what happens when Ruth and Boaz meet? Boaz has heard Ruth's story of her declaration. He honors that, says, "You will now glean in my field, and I will give you more than you can eat." They have a fantastic first date. where they have some roasted grain and wine, and Ruth returns back to Naomi to say, hey, we now no longer have to worry about food. So check one of those boxes away, and at the end of chapter 2, we find Naomi and Ruth sitting there amazed at what God has provided for them as they continue on for the course of several months, gleaning from the barley fields and the wheat fields of Boaz.
Nice.
That's where it ends.
That is good summary. And which, by the way, this only being a 4-chapter book, definitely within grasp of those who want to count it that they read a book in 2018. Also a good call on your part.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that struck me as interesting, and you talked a little bit about it, but I think it'd be good to kind of like help us go there. You made an emphasis to say, as we read the story, you need to say to yourself, I am not Ruth. What did you mean by that, and why? How do we need to identify in the story?
Yeah, so I think I was pointing out that there can be this assumption to the modern reader when you were taught to read in your English class that you are to put yourself in the shoes of the person going through that story and to be them, and you are to identify with the hero of the story, right? And so what I was suggesting is, in order to understand these ancient stories, first and foremost, take a step back and appreciate the story first before imposing yourself on it, and also realizing you are not Ruth, you are not Boaz. Those are distinct people that God has used in his redemptive history, and he has a distinct plan for you, and don't mix those two things up. This is Ruth and Boaz's story, and you are to learn from the type, the archetype, and you're more to learn what God is doing so that you can see the same patterns that God is doing in their lives in your life.
Okay.
So,
yeah. And that was, I think that's sort of where you spent time kind of like concluding this idea that like part of the benefit and value, the reason that we have these Old Testament stories is to watch and observe the patterns of God so that we can know God and then better understand our own world and thereby understand sort of like what can we look for God to do in the midst of our own circumstances. Am I tracking that idea right?
Yeah. You know, like I was trying to be a little more poignant about it, where I believe that there's this error again in the way that we think, where we assume when God promises and predicts something, that is, he gives a prophetic proclamation like, I will be good to my people, right?
Yep.
That what he means by that is you pray, you submit yourself to God, and he will give you an instance. He will take away all of your financial stress, all of your health stress, etc. And he might. But what he's more prone to do in Scripture is to continue a pattern that is mundane and in the background of your life of goodness. So if you want to see the answer to your prayer, like, Lord, please be good to me, bless me, then you need to look into the small things every month that he is blessing you with. Well, so, like, rather than say, Lord, please take away my financial stress, and therefore find the blessing in the taking away of that, you can look back over month where the Lord has provided for you, and you can see a pattern of provision, and you can take rest in that, lower your anxiety and your worry, knowing that the Lord has already answered that prayer over and over again in your life, and he will answer it again in his own way. So it's relying on a pattern that God has established for you more than a prediction fulfillment. And so I don't know if that's entirely clear, but that's what I was trying to aim at.
I got a question, and it could put me on the spot. But, you know, one of the things that I think about, like, you know, God alleviate my financial stress, right? I think at any point, any American prays like that. Michael Mbogo from Kenya, he is really perplexed at the American dilemma over money. It's just a different experience, I guess, in Kenya than it is in America. There's some similarities, but like we Americans have so much, and yet we also complain a lot about stuff. And so like it's a common thing for us to say, God, will you alleviate the financial stress, please? And I am with you on saying, like, there's a benefit and value that comes in where you begin to have a better perspective looking back and seeing all the ways God is providing. But I also look ahead, and I think this is good thinking. I'm legitimately asking you. I also look ahead and say, like, because of the gospel, even if my financial stress does not go away, or my present hardship, whatever it is, financial, relational, whatever thing's burning us out, stressing us, and making us feel like the world isn't right, even if God does not take that away from me, the future, which includes all things being redeemed, all things being made new, that future is incredibly bright. And when I know my ultimate destination is this incredibly good place, it then kind of like gives me the ability to accept whatever cards may be dealt out that I didn't really like. You think that plays well on the theological perspective?
I absolutely do. I think so. You're absolutely right. The future orientation of our hope is a fantastic place to be for someone who is in the midst of some really gut-wrenching, horrible things. Like, to be able to lift up your eyes and to look into the future and know that this thing will be redeemed and recreated is a fantastic, mature response as a Christian. What I was suggesting is that if you can't get there and you are in the moment, then you, as you struggle to even believe that there is a future worth looking up towards, if you look back, you will see a pattern. You will see that this isn't the only time you've run out of money. This isn't your first health challenge. This isn't the first time you've had to experience death. And you will see what God has done previously in those times, and you will begin to take heart so that you might lift up your eyes.
Yes.
And see the future orientation, or the future as it is being redeemed. So I was trying to be a little more step 1A. Yeah. With considering the patterns in our lives.
And I'm for that. I was just looking at the other angle because, I think the temptation, and I think this is why you were giving us some caution to not necessarily see yourself as Ruth, is to sort of like witness a story like this. And spoiler alert, it kind of has a happily ever after type feel where it heads. What I think we make a mistake to believe that, like, trusting God means happily ever after here and now. And what we need to be able to sort of like process is sometimes happily ever after is sort of like what eternity is all about. And sometimes the tension of life's hardships just are present for our life. And just as pastors, you pastor with me, and you're well aware, maybe even more aware than I am, of some present hardships in the church, and the hope that we need to be reminded of is that God is faithful to care for His people. But like the thing that we need to be cautious about, at least with the story of Ruth, is that doesn't always mean everything works out the way we wanted it to. And I don't even know if, like, in the circumstances of Naomi and Ruth, if even as this plays out, I don't know if it all is just perfect for them either. I mean, we don't get a lot of commentary about Ruth's opinion of Boaz. I don't know why, but the name Boaz just makes me think he was overweight. I don't know if that's true. I just hear that name and I'm like...
That's a great point.
Yeah.
No, he was much more the alpha male in my mind.
Oh, okay.
Than the beta male, perhaps.
Well, I'm sure all of his friends called him Bo. I mean, they had to.
Right, and there's some funny YouTube videos out there if you want to figure out how to find the Boaz for your life.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, yep.
I don't know if we need to be encouraging Googling that or not. I have no idea. I've never Googled Boaz, yes. And I don't know what's going to come up.
Yeah, so I think you're yes, there is this idea that if you impose your worldview, your culture, your understanding on Old Testament ancient stories, you're going to miss what they have to say. You're going to assume some things about what is actually happening, and you're going to miss some of the raw, awesome details that these stories have to tell us.
Mm.
Right?
Yep. Well, listen, that's we've reached our limit on what we try to do. We try to knock this thing out in 15 minutes, and I think we've looked at some things and readdressed them well. I'm looking forward to hearing the second half of the story, and I hope people listening in are going to be able to be part of that as well. So thanks for taking a few minutes out of your time down in Florida. What is it, like 80 degrees down there today?
Probably. It's always perfect down here when there's not hurricane.
That's true. So. Well, enjoy your time, enjoy your Thanksgiving, and thanks for doing an episode of Second Look with me.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yep. Take care. Yep. We're signing off. Thanks a lot, Second Look fans.